For the past few years, I've made it something of a tradition to play and give some thoughts on these free-to-all COD betas, with this underlying cynical tone of another year, another COD. Well, last year, the unimaginable happened. I thought the reboot of Modern Warfare was phenomenally good. We finally got a significantly reworked engine that made gameplay feel tangibly different, all of the bloat that plagued recent COD games was stripped away, and new, meaningful systems like the Gunsmith added an extra dimension to gameplay. It also featured the best military shooter campaign we've had in years, and somehow managed to introduce a fresh take on the cliched battle royale genre earlier this year with Warzone.
Ooh, what?
Triple kill, bitches! It's a remarkable package, and despite coming out so late in this console cycle, I would say it's the first truly next-gen COD game. If you ask me, it was the best game of 2019, and this is coming from someone who played through the entirety of Death Stranding and liked it. When a game is this good, this big of a step forward, the next question becomes, how do you top it? Well, the answer in this case seems to be that you don't. Before Modern Warfare was even officially announced, there were a few stories circulating about COD 2020 having a troubled development, and there's no greater evidence of that than the name on the box, Treyarch. Since Advanced Warfare, Sledgehammer's first release, COD games have been on a 3-year, 3-developer cycle: Infinity Ward, Treyarch, and the aforementioned Sledgehammer. Last year's game was, of course, Infinity Ward, and the year before that was a Treyarch Black Ops outing. Logic would dictate that this year is Sledgehammer's turn, so what gives? According to Jason Schreier, who at the time was still writing for Kotaku, this was originally a Sledgehammer project being co-developed with Raven, who have been providing assistance on COD games for a few years now. Allegedly, Sledgehammer and Raven didn't get along so well, leaving the project in a messy state. The end result of this was Big Daddy Activision stepping in to relieve Sledgehammer of their lead developer post and installing Treyarch in their place, with Raven left to handle the single-player side of things. Upheaval in the development cycle doesn't necessarily mean a bad game. Doom 2016, for example, went through years of development hell before becoming its final form. The difference is that with a yearly franchise like COD, there's very limited ability to delay, meaning that this is likely the most rushed development a COD game has had since the 3-developer cycle was introduced. So with all that context in mind, let's talk about my experience with the beta.
Capturing B.
Given how much of an overhaul MW was, I assumed that this year's game would be using the same framework and engine. Basically a reskin, sort of like how World at War was after the original Modern Warfare. Apparently, I assumed incorrectly. While some things do carry over from last year, according to various sources such as Digital Foundry, the engine is not the same. Presumably what we're getting here is a derivative of the tech used in 2018's Black Ops 4, which itself was essentially Black Ops 3 with advanced mobility removed. Whatever the technical case may be, the reality is that it doesn't only feel different to MW, but it's just outright worse if you ask me. For starters, a lot of the small gameplay flourishes like mounting, tactical sprint, select fire, and interactive doors are gone, although reloading while aiming down sights, a feature that should be in every game, does make a return. But more importantly, the simple act of moving and shooting, it's just not as good. There's no other way of saying it. We're stepping away from the weight and impact and going back to a game that feels more like Black Ops 4, with exaggerated slides and character models that don't look like they're attached to the ground they stand on. Guns have a tendency to feel weak, and while some of that is because of the stiffer animations and weird gun sounds, it's all compounded by the decision to go with a higher time to kill. It makes fights drag out, you lose your aim, and after a year of playing MW, it often feels like people should have died, but they didn't, which just leads to more frustration. Now, I'm an old school Halo guy, I can appreciate a long time to kill, but it just doesn't suit this game, and the implementation and balancing here is not good. I think the breaking point for me with this was frantically trying to land 3+ shots with the SPOS 12 just to secure 1 kill at point blank range. With the guns being as nerf as they are, it's a good thing that the Gunsmith Pick 5 system is back, and consequently, it's even more integral to gameplay this year. Without attachments, it's hard to get anything done, but once all the slots are loaded up to suit a certain playstyle, they change dramatically. It's maybe the only thing here that seems like an improvement over last year. There's a few new stats this time around, and everything is laid out in plain text with percentage values, giving you a better idea of what to expect. Field upgrades also make a return, but this time around, they're far more impactful in moment-to-moment gameplay, to the point of being obnoxious. The two worst offenders are the SAM turret, which shoots down enemy air support, and the field mic, which acts as a mini UAV. The recharge time on all of the upgrades is short enough that you end up with a lot of equipment spam on the map, and at times, it can be pretty hard to see. The only counter is to use the engineer perk that highlights equipment, which no one seemed to be doing, so I had to be that guy for my team. There's also a bit of what I'd call Black Ops seasoning here. Stuff like perks that let you reload and shoot while running, health bars over enemies, and wildcards in Create a Class. Then there's the Scorestreak System, which is easily the most baffling part of this game. I had my suspicions about how it worked, but it wasn't entirely clear to me through normal gameplay, so I had to look it up. The gist of it is that death does not reset your streak, but to compensate, the cost of score streaks is now rather high, with an elimination being worth only 50 points, and a simple spy plane costing 800. However, going on a kill streak gives you increasingly more points per kill, so dying is still a big setback, and kill streaks are still essential. It's also worth noting that this game adopts the Overwatch participation trophy style of scoring, awarding an elimination even if you just sneezed on the enemy. What does all this accomplish? Good question. I don't know. To make matters even worse, the HUD doesn't even show the points needed to earn a streak, just a nebulous little progress bar which, for the higher level streaks, makes it hard to tell how much is left. The whole thing is just a complete mess. The main consequence of this new score streak system is that you see a lot of low to mid-level score streaks, but not many high-level ones. I only saw 1 or 2 chopper gunners in hours of playing that weren't my own. To top it all off, the streaks, particularly the higher level ones, aren't even that good. I talked about how guns can feel nerf in this game, but the streaks are 100% nerf, despite them being pretty hard to get. Chopper Gunner was the highest available in the beta, costing a staggering 6,000 points, and you don't even get to control the flight path. Then there's ones that come off as lazy, like the War Machine Grenade Launcher, something that was just a specialist ability in the last 2 Black Ops games. One of the biggest complaints about MW was visibility, and in that regard, Cold War is a complete 180. As I mentioned, the field mic allows players to have mini UAVs all over the map, but you can now also see enemy nameplates from much further distances, doubly so if you have the flashlight attachment on your gun, and the minimap is back to showing enemy gunfire as red dots. There's even a pinging system, something that I thought should have been in MW, but in the games I played, I was usually the only person using it. Because of this location intel overload, people seem to always know exactly where you are in this game, and it can be super frustrating as it limits your ability to maneuver around the maps. If you try to flank or go rogue, you're going to get yourself into a 1v2 or 1v3 engagement, which, because of the high time to kill, is going to be a losing fight most of the time, no matter how good you are. What this means is that we're now back to the old style of play, where it's very obvious at all times where the enemy team is, and you're forced to just run towards them and fight without much thinking. The difference in combat flow between this game and MW is like the difference between the Revolutionary War, where everyone lines up and looks each other in the eye, and guerrilla warfare in the jungles of Vietnam. The maps themselves are super vanilla, and they don't offer the same emphasis on verticality we saw in MW. The only thing that stood out to me about the maps was how some of them gave snipers an unfair advantage. Although time to kill has been raised across the board, snipers can still get one-shot kills, and on a map like Broadcast, where an entire lane is just one long sightline, snipers are able to completely close off that area of the map to anyone that's not counter-sniping, since assault rifles and even DMRs can't compete with them. When it comes to game modes, the core 6v6 stuff is standard COD fare. TDM, Kill Confirmed, and Hardpoint, although this time around, Domination goes to 200 points with a halftime and spawn flip once a team reaches 100 points. I don't really see the point. It feels like it adds downtime for no reason. It's not like flipping spawns is going to change anything in a lopsided game. Returning from Black Ops 4 is Control. Capture 2 objectives, teams have a pool of lives to work with. Just like with Domination, I'm not a huge fan of the friction that comes from resetting each round. There's also a brand new 6v6 mode called VIP Escort, where one team has to exfiltrate one of their players and the other has to eliminate them. I played it twice and had a decent time, but it's definitely a gimmick. There's also Big Team again this year in the form of Combined Arms, which is 12v12. 2 modes were available in the beta, Domination, which goes to 400 points and has no halftime, and Assault, which is basically King of the Hill. The flagship map for these modes is Armada, which features multiple ships in the middle of the ocean. It's a bit too large for 24 players, which made the matches I played on it rather stale. Finally, there's Dirty Bomb, which is this game's answer to Ground War. 10 teams consisting of 4 players each drop in Warzone style, collect uranium from defeated enemies, deposit it into bomb points that are littered around the map, and then detonate them to win. This mode is horrible. You drop in, you're immediately surrounded. There's absolutely zero flow or coherence to what's going on here. I'm not sure what they're trying to do with this mode, but whatever it is, it's not working. The least you can say about Cold War is that it's definitely not just a reskin of Modern Warfare. But in a lot of ways, I feel like that would have been a better game. I spent a lot of time comparing this game to Modern Warfare, and that's because Modern Warfare was and is so good. It brought a lot to the table. Cold War really isn't bringing anything to the table, it's actually taking stuff away. While I don't like most of the creative decisions made here, I think this game is equally a victim of its tumultuous development process. It's nowhere near as polished as last year, there's a lot of recycled ideas, maybe even content, and it just feels empty. That being said, I'd much rather play Cold War than Black Ops 4 or World War II, but that's not saying much. If you're interested in seeing more gaming and tech videos, consider subscribing to the channel. If you'd like to see what I'm up to, the best way to do that would be to check out my Twitter, link in the description. Until next time, thanks for watching.